Hello, hello, hello. Live from Denver. It is Friday night. Welcome to another episode of Critical Conversations. Let me just check here. Oh, yeah. All good. Just I always getting a little paranoid about those sound checks. As you see, I am joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
So happy she is here to join us this week, especially for this conversation. I've got a few things to talk about. But first, welcome to the show. We are so happy, critics, that you are all here. I see all of the usual suspects here. And I've got my super special pop-up deal set to go. There it is. Yeah, so I can come in here and tag you guys on your comments. And just it's the little things sometimes, you know, is the little fun stuff you get to do. Anyway, what a week. What a week. What a week. What a scoop, huh? I was pretty happy to land that interview with the lead or jury foreman of the Danny Masterson trial. That was viewer support. That was luck and circumstance and all of that. And it really came together well. And I was very, very happy to be able to provide some behind the scenes, what the hell just happened, from a perspective that we would never have been able to get if Earl had not been willing to speak up about it. So that was very, very insightful. But during the course of the interview, I did not get a chance to say much of anything on purpose. Tony was asking all the right questions. I inserted a few, but he really led the interview, and I wanted him to because he knows how to ask questions, and it came out great. But I had to bite my tongue a lot. And this show tonight, I am not. I got some things to say. So we're gonna cover a few other intro things first, as everybody's coming on board here and joining us as we get started. Hey, wow, Australia, my goodness. I love the fact that we have a international audience here. That just pleases me to no end that people tune in from all over the UK, Australia, Europe. We had a call last week from a woman in France. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, we did.
So, so let's get to it first. To make sure that I've got all my bases covered in our little format all going strong here. We will be taking calls, but it probably won't be for a little while. So if you're calling in right now, prepare to be on hold because we will get to you, but it will be after we have done our duty here. So First off, Melissa has a quote of the week for us, and I am keenly interested in what she has chosen for that.
All right. Well, this is about anger. Speak when you are angry, and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. Ambrose Bierce. Sure you're all familiar with him?
I wonder if I'm going to follow that advice.
I know, right? It's good advice, but when you're in a mood, it's hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I know it well.
Yes. Okay, and then the other thing that we needed to get front and center for y'all as a get the show going thing here is our the third arm, the third member of our family. And I really do think about this now as our family. And that's another thing that I got to tell you, I'm just pleased as punch about, because I've had relationships. I've had, and of course we had 7, but I don't know, for some reason, he was always your cat.
Yeah, it was my family.
Yeah, and that's cool. I mean, I loved 7. I wasn't like that caused distance, but
yeah.
But Benson's ours,
right?
And Benson is so cute. How he will, you watch him like mom, dad, like which direction should I go when we're working in different offices during the day, or
mostly mom.
Yeah, mostly he hangs out with mom. It's true. Because I kick him out of here all the time because I got wires everywhere. But anyway, let's get some Benson cam in. There he is. Melissa got some amazing Benson cam for us today. So there he is. He loves to chew on pretty much anything.
Yeah, including things you don't want him to chew on.
Yeah, like anything.
Like I have lost several pairs of flip-flops this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And we've lost an awful lot of toilet paper rolls.
Oh my God, yes.
And tissue. I mean, he'll just chew into anything. We can't leave stuff out in the living room anymore because he just attacks it. And I mean, talking to the TV remote. I mean, anything. It's just if it's on a table or out somewhere where he can get it. So we've had to, put lemon juice on anything you don't want him to chew on.
Oh, that's good advice.
Never heard of
we'll
that.
Have to try that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Here, I'll throw that comment up on the screen. So, good advice. Okay, and yes, do go ahead. And I love you guys encouraging the sharing and liking of my videos. That is awesome. Please do keep it up. You guys are my little rah-rah squad, and I love it. Because I don't even ask. It just happens.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the main dish, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we got some things to say. So I'm expecting that if you're watching my show here tonight, you have some knowledge and experience or backstory on Danny Masterson's rape trial that resulted in a mistrial, and all the events that happened with that. The fact that there were 3 accusers with incidents that were charged against Masterson. There were 4 women who actually testified, 4 Jane Does, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the 4th one was testifying for the fact that she had never been a Scientologist, and to that pattern of behavior they were trying to sort of establish, but which they did a fairly inept job of, and which, and I say that only by result, not because I have something against the prosecutors as individuals or as people, or that they didn't bring all that they had to give or anything like that. This is no personal attack on those individuals who work in the DA's office, Assistant DA Mueller and his team, I'm sure, brought as, their best game or whatever, or tried to, but it wasn't very good. It doesn't matter what your intention is. It's with stuff like this, it matters what you do and what you don't do. And there were some pretty big blunders here that resulted in a hung jury, in a deadlock where it ended up being a mistrial. And we don't know yet, as we sit here right now, what the decision is from the District Attorney of Los Angeles as to whether there's going to be another trial of this. Are they gonna go for a round 2, or are they gonna drop it? And if they drop it, are they going to drop it in such a way that it can't ever be picked up again? Because they can do that. Or are they going to drop it in such a way that it possibly could be picked up again in the future, that these charges could be brought again? So, thank you, Darla, for that super chat. Very awesome.
Now, if new women come forward, because, if there's 4, there's more, they can do a different trial, right?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yeah, it would not be double jeopardy in that case. But with a mistrial, you do have the option of going at it again, bringing a different strategy maybe, or a different approach. You can change it up a little bit. It does not nullify what happened in the first trial or make it like it never happened. They still are going to be able to refer to that, use that information. But you can come back around and maybe try to tell the story in a little bit better, sensible, more coherent way, so the jury's not confused. And this jury was clearly a confused jury. They had all kinds of issues, and I've got 2 Post-it notes tonight of notes on this. So let me walk through a few things in terms of some of the thinking I've got on this that I think you guys might agree or disagree with. I'm really not sure what your guys. There's been such a spectrum and range of reactions to the interview with the jury foreman and to this trial in general. I have been on social media, a few different platforms. I have been getting a lot of input and feedback, just to me through emails and conversations with people. And it's all over the place. From support for Masterson and good, it was all, bullshit to begin with, which is not true, to all the way over to, believe the women, that they're telling the truth. They didn't get a fair shake. Their stories were not a problem. It was how it was presented to the jury that was a problem. Why did they rely on this report from the Church of Scientology and the contradictions in that report to the testimony, and then give that report more weight or as much weight, when they knew or should have known that that report was overseen by a Scientology ethics officer standing over her going, you're not going to put the word rape in there, and you're not going to put this or that. And so why
wasn't that talked about? Yeah.
But because, and the reason is because they didn't get it. This jury didn't get it. I was horrified listening to Earl go on at a mad rate about how all of their biases about women and what was a reasonable person do, and what that just didn't seem to make a lot of sense to us. And it's like they didn't even really try to put themselves in the shoes of the women who said what was going on in their mind, who said what happened, but instead decided, well, that doesn't sound reasonable to me.
I mean, there were women on this jury, right?
There were.
Okay,
and
I'm confused.
It's, I don't even go there to this is a man versus woman thing.
No,
though.
I'm just saying that, I mean, obviously men get sexually assaulted too, but like, obviously women, it happens more often, and you would think 1 in 4, there would have been a woman on the jury that would know, like how trauma really goes.
And it's very possible, because we didn't get the breakdown or think to ask Earl, man, woman, what was the voting situation. But it was a split, if I recall right, in terms of men and women on the jury. And I think, again, what I'm not going to lay some blanket thing on every person who is on the jury. I'm avoiding saying jurist like the plague, because I know that's a judge. It's not somebody on the jury, but it sounds like it should be.
Right.
Anyway, the jurors probably had different reactions and reasons for what they were bringing, and we're going to go over a few things as to why I think that whatever they brought, it was overwhelmed with a lot of nonsense. And okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit. So anyway, like I said, there's a large spectrum of reactions to this whole thing, and it's understandable that there would be. People bring an awful lot to their interpretation of reality when it comes to the law and legal system from TV and from various things they've had their own personal experiences with, or they've heard or seen, and they don't really understand how the system actually works. And so you get a lot of flyby commentary, including stuff as silly now as we know of, the church just paid everybody off. The judge was in the church's pocket. The jury was bought and paid for. And that's not, we don't have to go there. We already have dumb enough reasons why this happened without having to make up further deep conspiracy theories on this. The truth is actually a lot simpler and a lot more stupid. So what do we got? First off, we have the uneven lawyering. Okay, so I've talked to Tony and I've talked to some other people who were around in that situation, and we of course have heard from those people on this and other channels. And from that, you get a picture of I'm not going to go all the way out to incompetence, but I am going to say very poorly executed lawyering on the part of the prosecution, in that the case appeared to be presented to the jury in a very confusing way. And there were confusing elements to it, which required a walkthrough in a step-by-step fashion. And not just... this isn't something that jurists sit there and read. They got to read a lot of stuff. They got to read all these admonitions from the judge and stuff. Apparently, there was like a 20 or 30, 40-page binder of stuff that they had to be cognizant of and keep in their minds while they were debating. So it's even more important that the person who's talking to the jury, the prosecutor or any assistance he has, speak clearly, enunciate, make sure that the jury is following very clearly what is being said and that they are very clear cut and simple and direct in what they are saying to the jury. And in this case, that didn't happen. It was kind of all over the place, and it was and Mueller was confusing in certain areas, and the jury was clearly confused about certain facts and about certain relevancies, and even about reasonable doubt, as far as I'm concerned. But there's mental games that go on in this, and this is just lawyering 101. But again, if you don't have an evenly matched prosecutor and a defense attorney, then the defense attorney is going to run some rings around the prosecution. And that's apparently what happened here in regards to certain barbs and facts and things thrown out. For example, during a podcast today, Jane Doe 4 and Tony Ortega did a podcast and an interview, and part one of that dropped today. And she talked about how while she was giving her testimony, Cohen, the defense attorney, was asking her questions about Jane Doe 2. Oh, did Jane Doe 2 tell you this? Did Jane Doe 2 tell you that? Did she tell you she was pursuing this relationship? Did she tell you that she, did this and did that? And it's almost like, wow, how's he getting away with this? Because he's giving the jury all these breadcrumbs about Jane Doe 2. She's not there. There's no cross-examination of her to talk about this stuff. He's talking to and examining or cross-examining Jane Doe 4. So how's this supposed to work? Well, it's showmanship. It's purposeful showmanship on the part of the defense attorney to get data to the jury of a questionable nature that can't be challenged at that moment. And those first or second impressions, and the data goes in, and then it's bouncing around in there. And maybe that's not necessarily the way this is supposed to be conducted. But regardless of procedure, that's something that both sides can do and do. And the prosecution needs to be on the ball, right? Needs to be on that, needs to be stopping that kind of thing, needs to be defending that kind of thing or dealing with that kind of thing. And it was, again, clear from the results. Maybe their actions were, peerless, marvelous, flawless, errorless. Nothing was wrong with the prosecution's case. Well, maybe that's all true on paper, but however that was executed, this jury didn't get it. And that's why I'm so about, those errors in this case with that. Okay, so we have spin, and entering into there, okay? And that, again, procedurally, it's okay to do, apparently. So you have to be on the ball enough as the opposing counsel, and this is prosecution or defense, to deal with that. Okay, and it wasn't dealt with. Now, there's a larger picture here, but something that I think is worth commenting on because I think it speaks to some of the bias or problems with the jury that they were walking into the building with. And these are biases or problems that we can't test for, look for, or necessarily be able to weed out, and yet they exist, and this is a problem. And that is that the Me Too movement has kind of run its curve. And we've now, had it. It was very important. I'm not. This is no statement here when I say this that there's no longer or shouldn't be justice for women, or that these that this stuff doesn't still happen, or that there aren't still problems with this. What I'm saying is that socially, it came, it happened, and then there were some very controversial cases, and I'll point to Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, for example. It's okay with me if you have differing views from me on this. Personally, I believe Amber Heard is a predator. She happens to be a female. That kind of backfired quite spectacularly. PR-wise or image-wise, you could say. Regardless of whether it's true or not, in the public's mind, that watered down and hampered that Me Too social movement. And I'm not saying she's the single cause of that, Amber Heard. That trial was very contentious, very public, lots of opinions flying around on it, both sides. And I'm not going to go on a monologue about that. I'm only mentioning it to say that and similar things have acted to throw doubt and reservations and whatever into, it's not believe all women, because we found out not all women are worth believing. Most of them are, but context always matters. Remember, I'm always saying that context always matters. There is no generalized rule or hashtag that's always going to be true. So believe all women's not really a good way to go down on this. That leads to black and white thinking. It's all or nothing. We don't want that. So that was kind of a problem that I think was sort of sitting in the jury's head a little bit. Not directly. I'm saying this is kind of an indirect sort of thing, social thing, but it's a thing. Let me ask you this. Do you think this jury would have been as lenient, lax, and reasonable with Danny Masterson 2 or 3 years ago?
That's a good point. I mean, they may not have been.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? The public awareness of the issues surrounding Me Too was much higher and taken more seriously. That's all I'm saying. This isn't like what I want to have happen, that it goes down or goes up or whatever. I'm just saying this happened. So I think that's part of the issue here.
It's just sad how short attention span theater the whole society is now. It's like, oh, that happened a few years ago, whatever.
Exactly.
That's so far in the past now.
Well, it is, and it is annoying. And it's fine, because somebody says, yes, they would have been as lenient. Fair enough. Maybe, I'm just asking. I don't think they would have been, but fine. It usually takes a few rounds of social movements of, it's kind of like it's not a straight line. It's a step and then a step and then a step and sometimes a step back and then a step. This is how social change happens. So, yeah. Yes, I do have my chilly clothes on today. It's chilly around here. It's been cold in Colorado lately. Okay. Now, this is a big one, this next one, and the one that really hits me hard and really got me thinking hard about this was the anti-science bias, the anti-social science bias. Now, again, timing, COVID happens. And what is one of the biggest problems that came out of COVID or emerged with that was that people have very weird ideas about science, and ignorant ideas or ill-founded ideas about science got an awful lot of reinforcement during the COVID lockdowns because people were angry and upset, economically challenged. I mean, there were a lot of problems during COVID. We all know about this, right? All the stand-up comedians are all telling jokes about it now and stuff, and it was a really stressful time for everybody. And during that time, a lot of people need a target. They need a simple answer to this problem that explains it. And, oh, well, the reason we're locked up is because of science, and so therefore science must be bad and wrong, and so therefore kill Fauci, and let's burn him in effigy, and screw science, and screw vaccines, and screw all this crap. It's all nonsense anyway, and they don't really know what they're talking about. You do a couple Google searches, and you find a few errors made in science, and that's a big topic, and lots of places to find lots of errors and lots of changes. And people go, oh, see, they're changing their mind all the time. And you're like, you moron, that's how it's supposed to work,
right,
But
exactly.
it's like the bugs, become the features, and the features become the bugs. It becomes opposite world. Well, we're still just fresh out of all of that, in terms of our minds, how, the effects of that. And on top of that, we've already got decades of distrust in psychology and psychiatry with lots of good reasons. I'm not even saying that this is all unfounded, but we've got distrust. And yet I happen to know for a fact now that I've kind of, gotten into that world, that there is science there. There are studies. These studies do matter. There are standards. They are held to those standards. It is not just the situation that a psychologist has this fancy idea and sits and writes a paper and everybody goes, ooh and ah. It doesn't work like that. Studies have to happen. Yeah. Numbers have to be crunched. Calculations
proven. Yeah.
And other people have to examine it and look at it and agree to it. And even with all this, you can still have mistakes, and you can still have fads and all the vagaries of groups that we have that become problems. All of that happens in science too, and yet we still have fields of knowledge and endeavor where facts and reason and logic and consistency matter. And all of that, all of what I just said doesn't mean a thing to people on this jury and probably to at least half the population out there. They don't care. They don't think science matters at all. And as Earl said during
somehow they think their non-educated opinion is better than a scientist. That's bizarre.
Well, exactly. And that on the topic of the science, which is really nuts. But that's where we are, right? That's one of the unintended consequences and effects of the algorithmic, pushing of nonsense to people and them going down those internet rabbit holes for years now. And this has been a problem even before the internet. Now the internet exacerbates it. Then COVID exacerbates it even more. And all I'm saying is we've never been in a place where so much of the population has such an avid distrust of science, right? And authorities. Not everybody, not by a long shot, but certainly a lot. So, what's that? Oh, okay. How can I generalize about people on a jury that I do not know? Well, I do know one of them, and he did give me a pretty good indication of what happened with the rest of the jury. So based on that knowledge and the outcomes and probabilities of what's going on, I can speculate about anything I want. And that's what I'm doing right now, and giving a breakdown analysis of what I believe was the problem here. If you don't agree, you don't have to, but I certainly have well-founded speculation here, and that's what I'm doing. So as far as the anti-science bias, I really don't think this is a controversial statement, especially considering that this jury received testimony from a well-regarded, well-known, and prolific expert witness on the subject of how women behave after traumatic episodes of sexual assault. This woman had testified in, I think, 70 plus court cases. And I was told by people who were in the room that she was by far the best witness, or one of the best witnesses the prosecution had. And the jury wrote her entire testimony off in one sentence. Oh, well, yeah, she's an expert, but the defense can just get another expert to say the exact opposite, and so we don't have to listen to a word she says. And they disregarded everything she had to say. It wasn't important to their deliberations. And the key to the deliberations were the state of mind and actions of these women during and after the rapes, the assaults. And the jury sat there and fiddled. And you want to talk about, how can I speak to their state of mind? Well, this jury had no problem getting into the state of mind of these women and deciding that it wasn't reasonable. And so therefore, I don't believe them. They must be lying. Bullshit. The jury simply didn't listen to the evidence presented to them. They disregarded it callously and purposefully and patted themselves on the back for doing a good job anyway. So, not cool on the part of the jury. And I call that an anti-science bias. I don't think that's actually really that far of a stretch of speculation, considering that that's what I was told they did. Nope, we don't have to listen to that. We don't have to think with that. We don't have to consider that. You know what? These women's actions don't make sense to me as a middle-aged man, so therefore they're lying. That's what this jury did. And that's why they got hung up on a mistrial on a hung jury, is because they didn't actually consider all the evidence. They just thought they did and told themselves they did.
Well, they did what a lot of people do online, and they, when they read half the article and then started having opinions in the comments, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, we're not like actually getting all the information. We're not listening to all the information. We're, putting some of that information aside because it just doesn't make sense to me. And of course, I know better.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's human nature in a lot of ways,
Oh, it's not. It's completely.
You think you know better. It's just the way we are. Yeah.
What do we talk about here all the time, right? Well, I mean, literally every week we read biases and cognitive dysfunction that people have from this deck of cards. That's why I'm holding it up here.
And every
week we do that, right? And we all do all of these. So, they're only human, right? But they had a job to do, and they didn't do their job according to the standards by which they were held to do their job. That's what my takeaway from our interview with the head chief jury foreman. That was my takeaway from that, is these guys didn't do their job. They just think they did. And I'm trying to critique what those points were. So, on top of the science thing, I'm trying to kind of take this in layers. Is the other problem here is, as I mentioned during the interview, and I brought up before, I think I mentioned this last week, is coercive control is a term. It's used and it's studied and promulgated and talked about, and there are books about it regarding domestic violence. And these cases were cases of domestic violence. Masterson was in relationships with some of these women. These were all sort of relationship status. He was friendly with them. This was not stranger danger, Masterson jumping out of an alley and attacking them. These were friendly situations, social situations where they didn't see it coming, and it came out of nowhere. And they had to deal with the fallout of that and the continuing social relationship that was sort of mandated to them. Remember, one of them went to the church and was told by the Church of Scientology's chaplain, well, you owe him as much sex as he wants. That's your job as his partner. So shut up. It wasn't rape. It can't be rape because you're in a relationship with him.
Well, isn't in California too, you were saying that like the law is that if you were unconscious and not fighting back, that's not rape somehow?
Yeah, because it has to be forcible and overcome the woman's will.
Yeah.
And if they're just laying there unconscious, apparently that's not the thing. I don't know if that's an across the boards requirement or mandate or what the deal is with that, but somehow that piece of information fit its way into this case, and it's a very, very hard to navigate piece of information that you can, attack somebody who's unconscious and not call that rape.
I just don't understand why it's so ridiculously fucking hard to define it. Every other state has different ways to define it. It all depends on what court system you end up in, and it's just like, how can we not come up with a definition for just a flat? If she didn't say yes, that's it.
Yeah. Well, as far as consent goes, I think that is being more recognized.
But in the law, it's not. The law needs to be updated.
I can't argue for or against that. I just know that it's weird, and this is and different states have different approaches to this, of course. But my point is, where I was going with all this is that the term coercive control. This is an important term. This is a term that is well known and used by social scientists, by psychologists, therapists, rape support groups, women's support groups, men's support groups for that matter. Especially, in that whole space or area, coercive control is the term that's used to describe this repeating pattern of abusive behavior, controlling behavior, isolation, manipulation, and control. It's a pattern. You can spot it. You can break it down. It's codified in the law in the United Kingdom as of 2015. It is getting some legs over there, over here in the United States. it's it's non-existent in the courts as far as that term goes, and it was only used once in this entire trial, the term itself, and it wasn't even defined, and yet this entire case was all about coercive control. And somehow that got completely missed, and that really pissed me off. Knowing what I know, and knowing that the resources that I have available to me are just as available to the prosecution's team. This is law. This is not like some weird idea I'm pulling out of Timbuktu. This is domestic violence and how it's dealt with, at least in other parts of the world. And it's something we need to learn how to do a hell of a lot better. So I was very, very upset that coercive control was not harped on or even defined for the jury and introduced as a concept. Hey, guys, think with this. Here's a thing that happens, and it doesn't even have to be violent in order for it to be not okay. But it leads to violence. Violence often is part and parcel of it. So let's talk about this, and let's explain the context of this and how it actually works. Because this is how predators actually control women for years. This is how female predators control men for years, is coercive control. And there's lots of elements to it that they can utilize. Right? Controlling social contacts, when you can leave the house, whether you can have a bank account, whether you can have a job, whether you get to have those friends or not, whether you get to join that club or not. All of that is controlled and mandated by the abusive partner who is coercively controlling their partner. It is not an equal relationship. No. It is the exact opposite of that. None of this explained to the jury. And of course, I've already addressed the fact that, with this jury, even if it had, these guys would have just disregarded it, right? So we need that barrier has to be overcome. I was pissed about that.
Well, I like Wendy Gomes' comment here that he should go on a date with Ronda Rousey or Gina Carano. Oh,
God, yes. That would have been fun. That would have been fun. Although, remember, he was drugging him.
That's true.
At least it wasn't a charged offense, but it was clear in the pattern of testimony. And this is, again, one of these things where it's like the jury just disregards patterns. It doesn't matter. Couldn't be, because all of these women must be lying. I mean, come on. 4 women testifying to the same pattern of behavior, and they all are lying. I mean, this jury is out to fucking lunch. Anyway, sorry. Pardon me. I'm getting all profanely upset now. I didn't want to go there.
Well, another thing that didn't make sense to me about the jury was because there was 3 different charges, and on one charge it would be like 7 and 5, and then the other one would be like 9 and 3 or something, and you're like, why did you think it was rape on this one and he didn't rape the other girl? It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. and there were 3 women. He had to be found guilty on 2 of them in order for this thing to work. And they couldn't even agree on 1. I mean,
yeah.
All right. Now, we did get a super chat earlier with a question.
Yes.
Let me throw it up on the screen here. Gurroar asks, do you think the Masterson family actually believed Danny Masterson or were forced by Scientology to show up to save face? I mean, they must know what he's like. I got
parental denial is strong.
Yeah, I got some mixed ideas on this one. There's no.
I mean,
the Masterson family is closer than you might think. They are very tight, always have been. It's not hard for me to believe that Masterson has convinced his family that he's absolutely positively being set up. These are Scientologists. Let's remember that this family is all Scientologists and have been for decades. Masterson was raised as a Scientologist. So I can tell you from my own experience with that and what the Scientology mindset is like, that they absolutely believe that this is something Leah would have gone out of her way to set up, and that it was within her means to do so, to coordinate a conspiracy of women coming forward to accuse Masterson of this. And I could absolutely see them believing that that is absolutely true. One of the things about when you mentioned, the thing I wanted to say up here is, you mentioned, they must know what he's like. Not necessarily.
No,
Not necessarily.
Denial can be very strong in a family. You don't want to believe your family members that way. People
That's right.
can hide things for years and years and years. It seems crazy, but they can.
Yeah, and people have successfully hidden much worse than this from their own family for decades. If you look into the cases of serial killers, who got away with it for a long time, all the way back to Ted Bundy and others. I think Green River, some other ones. These were family men. These were people who had wives, kids. They didn't have a clue until suddenly, everything fell apart. So, so that's kind of what I meant there. It's a little complicated. There's a lot there, but no, do not underestimate the power of denial, but also don't underestimate the charismatic power of a predator, especially one who is trained as a professional actor. And that's Danny Masterson. Like his work or not, the guy's a pro actor, and he has lived a lifestyle of excess for a long time. And he hangs around people who enable and support that kind of behavior. I'm not saying that everybody around him supports rape. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they enable the drinking and the drugs and the partying and the hanging out and the lots of sex and let's do whatever comes naturally to us and all of this kind of crap. That's Masterson's world and has been for a long time. So certainly was back in the time when he was partying hard with these women and other Scientology and non-Scientology celebrities and living the life of Riley. So, his family knows he's like that, but I don't think they believe that he actually was guilty of these crimes. I don't think that for a minute. I don't think they would have actually shown up in court to support him if that was the case. And again, tight family, right? He's no black sheep or anything like that, as I understand the family dynamics of the Mastersons. Yeah, pro might be a stretch. I know, but he acts and he gets paid for it, so he's a professional. Okay, so now, and then as far as this other question, somebody asked me if I would testify as an expert witness on coercive control. Yeah, of course I would. Of course I would do that. Okay, but there are other people who are far more qualified than I am to talk about coercive control. And there were other people on the witness list for the prosecution. And one of the things that got in the way of this case, I think, might have been, the let's get this thing done that was coming down from the judge all the time. Now, I think the judge was fair. I think the judge was reasonable, but I think the judge was in a hurry. And there were more witnesses and more case to be made that the prosecution had planned on making and didn't. They didn't call Lisa Marie Presley. That would have been a big deal, and they didn't do it. That would have made an impression on the jury, to have Elvis's daughter on the stand saying, the Church of Scientology told me to go shut this woman up, and I did. Yeah, that kind of would have mattered. And they didn't do that. They didn't have her testify, and there was really no good reason not to. There were other expert witnesses on their list. I don't think it's any, secret. I think Tony reported on this that Claire Headley was going to be an expert witness. And she would have, I'm sure, been incredible as a witness on the stand to tell this jury about Scientology and the cover-ups and the this and the that and the other things that happened there, to connect those dots. Because last point I'll get to is the fact that Scientology was not and could not be talked about in the way it needed to be talked about in this case. The jury was absolutely clueless about Scientology. It didn't even come up in their deliberations. Yet there is no way to understand what happened to these women, or why they acted the way they did, or what the sequence of events are, if you do not understand Scientology's involvement in this. And this is where I was gnashing my teeth the hardest and where it hurt the most, is watching this entire case play out and watching the judge and the defense make a hash out of the idea of bringing Scientology into this courtroom in any way, shape, or form. It was barely there, and it didn't register at all with this jury. And they totally missed the boat because of that. Probably talking a little, but man, I am just like fit to be tied on this. Wow, we've been going for a while.
Yeah.
So that was that was just, it's just not even there at all. Like all the things we know, right, about Scientology, the snitch culture, the totalist control system, the fact that these women were told in no uncertain terms that they were not to report, that they were not to go to the authorities, that it wasn't even rape, that in fact that it was their fault, their problem. They're the ones who were inventing all of this and making all of this up and making a big deal out of nothing. Right? Their own church is telling them this, and everybody in their social circle is basically coming down on this line, and they know it. The women, the victims knew they weren't going to get any support in Scientology's world, and their whole world was Scientology. And this doesn't matter. This can't be talked about. This is hush hush religious freedom bullshit. This is part and parcel of the case, and it should have been front and center in that courtroom. And I know that there are, we've heard ad nauseum about all the restrictions on First Amendment. You can't try a religion. Well, I'm not trying to try a religion. I would like to see the destructive religious practices
mentioned
that aren't even faith-based, like the procedures, the reports. They could get a report from Scientology. From Jane Doe 1, they had I think it was Jane Doe 1, they had a report, and they completely disregarded and ignored the context of the report. The jury did. They just gave it the same weight as they gave her testimony, and they shouldn't have, and they didn't understand the differing situations there. That in one of those cases with that report, the ethics officer is standing over her shoulder, editing every comma. That matters, but this jury didn't give a shit about that. They didn't even think about it twice. Totally missed the boat. Completely. So, all of these contradictions, that was spin by the defense. The defense had no case. All they could do was poke holes in the prosecution's case, and this jury fell for every single one of their ploys. And the stupid part is the jury foreman tells us, well, it seemed the defense attorney was using a lot of marketing tactics. In other words, PR spin. They could see it, but then they didn't factor it. They didn't factor it as a group into their calculations of what truths were they told, what lies were they told. They didn't factor it in. Oh, okay. So there you go. Okay. Yes. Until we make headway into breaking down the First Amendment, this will continue with Scientology. Something needs to change. And yes. I don't know that it's freedom of religion that needs to change, but I think our court's attitude about how that right is
what
managed.
It means,
how it's interpreted, I guess we could say. In a legal context, when it comes to actual criminal offenses, this needs a complete overhaul in our courts. This is why televangelists, destructive religious cults, shady practices in religious circles, these guys just get a pass up one side and down the other, right? They have to be so far out in left field before the IRS or the feds or, people will notice. And I think one of the reasons why is because of how hard it is to prosecute them. So the feds go, you know what? I got other fish who are doing other big crimes. I'll go take care of them because this religious stuff, I can't even get it into the courtroom. I can't even make any progress on it. And that's a real problem in this country, is that we give so much power and influence to this group of people because they say they're holy men.
Ugh.
And they get a pass. They get a pass on taxes automatically. You don't even have to apply for tax exemption if you open up a Christian church. Actually, a church of pretty much any kind will get you free tax exemption. Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. John Oliver, figured that out years ago, right? Our system is people run rings around it, and they make millions doing it, right? So again, from my position, very frustrating. Okay, so those are the things I had on my Post-it notes. God damn it. This trial was such a miscarriage of justice on so many fronts because of the way the prosecution presented the case, the way they were hampered in presenting the full context and picture of what happened to these women. They were completely denied. I mean, in the podcast with Tony today, Jane Doe number 4 said when she went up to give her testimony, they told her, do not mention Scientology. Do not do this. Do not do that. Telling her what she could and couldn't talk about or say to such a degree that itself becomes an obstruction of justice. Mm-hmm. That's the point I wanted to make, right? Is that these procedures act in such a way as to actually obstruct justice when their intent, however good meaning it is to carry out justice. They think, oh yeah, we're going to get justice with this. No, in this case, you didn't get it so bad that you actually obstructed it. And that's why these women did not get a fair shake. And that's why I really, really, really hope that they get another round at this and a do-over. And failing that this civil case is taken to the mat, and that they get Masterson and the church, who are both co-defendants in that civil case, not in the criminal case. In the criminal case, it's only Masterson. In the civil case, it's the Church of Scientology as well. That's not going to be a fast action. That civil case is going to drag out. It's going to be, tough for them. We'll see where it goes. But still, right now, the here and now, the front and center for us is this criminal case. And I really hope that they get another shake at this, and that the prosecution brings a much better, much more informed, and much more complete case to the jury, and makes it in such a way that the jury gets it and doesn't just have their eyes glaze over with their misogyny and bullshit that they bring to this. They need to come as a jury and actually consider all the facts presented to them. And this jury did not do that. They just pretended to. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a call. We've had this person on hold a while. Oh, no. Not too long. Here we go. Hello, you were on.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Hello. Yes, yes.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Well, as somebody who has studied law for a long time, I thought it was worth staying up to comment. And I know obviously a lot of people are very frustrated, yourself included, but I do have to take a bit of an issue with just how negative sort of the characterization of the jury has been. It sounds like, now we only have their word to go on, but that's all we have. It sounds like they tried their best with the information they were given. And when the prosecution has a witness list with so many expert witnesses on it that could explain these things, and that isn't presented to lay people who do not understand these issues, and we could not expect to understand these issues, I think we know where the blame lies, and it's not with the members of the jury that had not the information they should have had. It's with the people that failed to present it and the people that failed to challenge it. So on your own video you posted many years ago about critical thinking, about how little is said by certain phrases such as studies show. Well, which studies? What studies? Is this a scientific consensus? The jury could have had those thoughts going through their head of one expert witness and very little backup. I don't think that's them disregarding somebody outright as if it's just for nothing. Maybe they thought, we don't know.
Yeah, okay. Point well taken. I understand exactly what you're saying, and it is a good point. However, the jury foreman specifically said to me before we did the interview, and then has said again during the interview, that the statement about Ms. Mechanic's entire testimony about how women act in relationships after being sexually assaulted was just somebody's opinion. Oh, that was based off of college students who were paid for a study. And he said, in his own words, all of that was based on one study of college students. It wasn't. They didn't actually get what she said. They were spun by the cross-examination, and they put more weight on that than they did on what she actually testified to. That's my problem with that. It's and I agree with you that ultimately the jury can't be held too accountable for this because of the fact that the well-rounded case was not presented to them. Agreed. No. But I am gonna tag them on this business of ignoring the science, because that's what the foreman said they did.
I understand, but I think that maybe the prosecution could have helped by highlighting that in their closing arguments, for instance. They did have a chance to respond and they didn't do it. The other thing that I would say is that from what the jury has said and from what the defense did, anybody they tried to present themselves, and we don't know if they told the whole truth or not, but they tried to present themselves as almost what you would want a jury to do. And the defense lawyer did what you would want a defense lawyer to do. And when we live in a system where so many people are thrown in jail almost arbitrarily with ineffective legal counsel, well, sometimes the price of that system is a defense lawyer that might do his job, for want of a better phrase, a little too well.
Fair enough. You're not going to get any pushback from me on the fact that the prosecution did not get a good case presented. I'm absolutely on board with that. Absolutely. And I maybe we can agree on the fact that it is that the burden of this responsibility is on the prosecution. If I'm coming across that the burden of this falls on the jury, that would be a mistake on my part, because I agree that the prosecution are the ones who made a bad case, and the jury's outcome of this was a failure on their part to recognize just how bad a case, and they fell for a lot of the nonsense that was presented to them. So I'll give that much. Does that work?
Well, I would agree. I also think of what they said, the amount of requests they made from the judge. The jury took their job very seriously.
I agree they did. Yeah.
From what little we know about jury deliberations in general, that doesn't seem to happen very often. One of the reasons why not guilty verdicts are so much are such in the headlines is because they happen so rarely. Yeah. And in my opinion, it's the best of a bad bunch of systems, because being able to pick your defense lawyer is the only opportunity that a private citizen has to stand against the unlimited power of the state. And I don't think we can or should change that, because if the state could hire externally, suddenly all the best lawyers in the country would be snapped up with massive offers from state budgets, and no defendant in any case would stand a chance.
No argument for me. This is no attack. My entire tirade here is no attack on the functions or structure of our system. It's a failure of these parts of the system to work the way they're supposed to that I have a problem with. And structurally or sort of system wide here, I have a huge problem with the barriers that exist to getting religious activities examined in a court of law the way they should be. If it has the word religion
definitely.
stamped
and that
on
would
it,
not happen in the UK.
I know, and it's a big problem over here, and that's a big difference that we have, and I'm really upset about it because it results in an inability to go after these groups in a substantive and in a meaningful way for us little people, for us victims of these monolithic cults. We're hamstrung before we can even get into the courtroom because of all the restrictions on what can even be brought into the courtroom on those matters.
I mean, from first principles, I really don't understand. I don't understand how they can say that it is anything to do with religious freedom to mention that the doctrines of a religious group might have harmed somebody or made them reluctant to do something, or maybe if they were complicit in a crime, maybe it made them more likely to commit the crime. Why could undue religious influence not be a defense in the case of an alleged accomplice, for instance? I don't see how any of that has any relevance to religious freedom whatsoever. I really don't.
Me neither, but we're not judges, and that's the problem, right? That's the problem.
Yeah.
All right, David, look, I got another caller in the queue. I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much. You made very relevant points, and I appreciate the pushback on my anti-jury tirade there. You are not wrong. I agree with you. Thanks for clarifying.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's been a very fascinating show.
Thank you. All right, man. Talk to you. All right, and let us take this last call here because if I'm spotting this right. Hello, is this France calling?
Hello, wonderful. Good evening to you both.
Hello. Wow, you are calling in again from France. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm calling from Paris.
Oh.
No, I'm not joking.
Wow.
It's true. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. And as I said the last time, I'm a huge fan, and you both look, as usual, stunning tonight. Your wife has a beautiful smile. Aww. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry because the caller before he spoke so well English, and I'm always a bit intimidated by that. I hope you forgive my bad English.
Not a problem.
Anyways, I just wanted to say I have to say that I listened to the interview you did with Tony, and I have to say it was a masterclass interview. I mean, really much appreciated. And I don't know if you realize how much work you both, both Tony and you did to have the prosecution in future to make the next case. Because what we heard in this interview is actually what's going to happen, what the prosecution, if they are clever and if they find out that someone made this interview, they can use that to actually prepare their case a bit better. I have to say, in my opinion,
that's exactly why we did that interview, was exactly what you just said. That's what we want. Yeah.
But I have to say that you both did it very, I highly respect Tony Ortega. I follow him for so many years, and I know you now since just a couple of months, but I highly respect you too. But what I really love about that is the way you really go into the deep conversation. And what was, in my opinion, with this expert witness interesting was that they did not ignore it only. They ignored it because they didn't talk with any of the victims. And they didn't talk with Danny.
Yeah.
And that was, for example, in the defamation case with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, another case, because
Good point. Yes.
So in a defamation case, and we're talking about a criminal case, and there is way other, I don't know how you say that in English, but other importancy to prove your case, you know, to bring someone in jail, or to just say, okay, we order someone to pay millions of dollars, which he might never pay, like in the O.J. Simpson case, is a different story. But to bring someone in jail, you know, those juries have to really consider everything. And as far as I understood in this interview you both did, very clever. And I love the guy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He was very honest. He was very on point. He was actually explaining everything in detail. And as far as I understand, they were fact-checking. They were saying, okay, we had 2 cops. There was a gun, never mentioned in any report. How is that possible? One time she said she was in the shower. Another time she was saying, I don't know, gender 1 or 2, doesn't matter. But they were really focused on what they had as fact-checking. And he was asking the question, why did the prosecution not talk with them before, saying, preparing them better in what they are going to testify about? Yeah. Why are they bringing up stuff? And honestly, in a domestic violence case, and there is this circle of violence, which is very traumatizing, which I highly appreciate that you and your wife are speaking so openly about it. It doesn't, I'm not addicted only to you both because you are bringing up the Scientology stuff. I'm really highly appreciated to your content because you speak so well about what the trauma means to victims. I was by myself a victim of domestic violence, so I understand the circle of violence, and it's very difficult to bring it to court and to explain it, the isolation, the depression, the threats, the not knowing what to do because you don't understand what happened to you. Yes. You are suddenly, act out of the pattern. You don't want to be embarrassed. But all those details, unfortunately, as I believe, and maybe you can help me out with that, do not matter much in a criminal case, or should they have presented it differently? And that is where I'm struggling with. So you have 12, I guess, no? Mm-hmm. Jurists, which are not psychologists, which are not on a cult, including expertise. They have no idea who Scientologists. They have been questioned about it before. And so they are just going for fact-checking. And if the prosecution knew that, okay, we are not going to get the Scientology part in that criminal case now here in court, what can we do to convince those 12 people not knowing what's really going on in a cult, all those dependencies, and they are not really knowing what is a circle of domestic, how can we present that? And if they just went, they said very clear that the report, that there were 2 police officers not mentioning guns, and Tony asked, and that was a very interesting question, that one of them said it might have been a gun involved, but you just don't remember, but they were fact-checking. So for the prosecution now, that's where they can work on with now. And honestly, I mean, domestic violence in a criminal case. Look at what is it, R. Kelly, and as I said last time, and I love to call you because you both are amazing, and I love to support each other as much as I can. France loves you. It's sorry, you're watching.
It's all good.
Yes. One day, I hope you both come to France, and you're very much invited here.
Oh, well, thank you.
You are.
Thank you. Yeah. I can make.
Awesome.
Thank you. Always welcome. But
well, I agree.
Again,
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think you're making a very good point that the prosecution definitely needs to make a better case, and the jury really did. And if I've been too harsh on this jury, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little harsh.
I don't think you are. I think you do. You are not at all. I think what happens is that this injustice, what is happening with Scientology victims over years, makes people being involved so a bit anxious, probably, and I believe those victims too, because of the experience we see with Scientology that honestly presented to a jury that way. It might have worked in a civil case, and they have everything. They have not Priscilla, what is her name? Lisa, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lisa. They have Lisa. They can bring all of those witnesses. And anyway.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the civil case will definitely go better for them no matter what happens here. I just really wanted.
And I tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, go ahead.
I think that OJ was destroyed. I just think that OJ was destroyed after the civil case because the reality hit. And in other cases where civil cases, like Johnny Depp did not win a criminal case against Amber Heard. She did not end up in any jail.
Right.
But it was quite obvious that she lied. And so I hope that in a way, the prosecution takes everything you both did in this masterclass, super level, high, whatever level interview with a lot of patience, with a lot of passion. And oh my God, I loved it so much. And this is what the prosecution needs. Thank you. And I wish you both a wonderful night. And thank you so much for being who you are. I love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Good, guys. Okay, we're going to wrap up our show. Okay, we've gone overtime.
Yeah.
I wanted to take those calls. I always appreciate both of those international calls, by the way, which is kind of cool. So let's do our card of the week, and we will be on our way.
Loaded question. Asking a question that has an assumption built into it so that it can't be answered without appearing guilty. Grace and Helen were both romantically interested in Brad. One day with Brad sitting within earshot, Grace asked in an inquisitive tone whether Helen was having any problems with a fungal infection. Oh, that's rude.
Yeah. How did this get turned on here when we were... I'm not sure how that happened. But looks like we're still live over here, so something weird happened. Okay, folks. Thank you very much for the loaded question. Just to wrap up, as usual, podcast is already posted, so there will not be a new one tomorrow, but there will be a critical Q&A on Sunday. All right. And anything else
No.
Okay. All right, folks. We're just... it's my birthday this weekend. That's what I have planned this weekend. Is Sunday is my birthday. Exactly 2 weeks to the day before Christmas, of course. I'm a December baby. So, of course, I will end the show by saying, if you want to support the show, you want to buy me a birthday present, you want to help out, you want to keep this thing going, please do either join me on Patreon or, of course, there's PayPal, Venmo, whatever. Links are in the description to this video on YouTube. And with that, we will wrap up. I'll see you guys next week. All right.